all, let us talk about failure rate and MTTF. So, when we are talking about the reliability of the product, these two terms are very, very important. So, what do we mean by failure rate and what do we mean by MTTF? MTTF is the short form for mean time to failure. Okay, so let us first talk about failure rate. Failure rate, let us take for an example a mobile, okay, which is being tested for number of hours. For example, let us assume we tested for 1000 hours, okay, and when we tested for 1000 hours, let us assume there are two failures that are observed. So the failure rate, okay, failure rate is given by the ratio of number of failures, which is 2, by hours tested, which is 1000. Okay, which means for this the failure rate is 0.002. Okay, so this is how we calculate the failure rate. So what do we mean by this? Okay, for a guy who doesn't know what is these terminologies, let us talk about the ideal failure rate value. For example, let us assume an ideal scenario where we have tested for 1000 hours and the failures observed are 0. That is the ideal scenario, right? That means when we calculate failure rate, it becomes 0, right? So ideally, anything that comes as 0 is good. That means there are no failures observed within a given period of time, and it could be the expected time for which the product might be operated also, right? Now, or during testing, if we may not be able to do a complete life cycle operation, at least we can say or claim that these many hours it has operated without failures, right? So this, if you see, this can also be denoted in terms of percentages. 0.002 can be written as 0.2%, right? So 0.2% failure is a very, very good criteria, correct? So generally, any failure rate that comes less than 10% is always treated as a good scenario. Now 0.2% is very good actually. Now let's come to MTTF. What I mean by MTTF? MTTF, okay, is nothing but inverse of failure rate. We can say 1 by, if we denote a short form of FR, which is 1 by failure rate, or it can be said number of hours for which it is tested by number of failures. That means 1000, okay, by 2. That means 500. Okay, so for every 500 hours, there is a failure expected. So if we draw a small graph, okay, initially 500 hours, the system operates without any issue. Then there is a failure. Again, for 500 hours, the system operates without any issue and there is a failure. So MTTF says mean time to failure. That means 500 hours. Again, here if it is 0, that means infinite. So we want the system to operate without any issues, ideally, right? So which may not be possible if we consider especially there is definitely chance of failure which might occur for any kind of systems, right? It could be wear and tear, environmental, any other thing could be a cause. So now MTTF, mean time to failure, in this scenario is 500 hours. So 2 points, one is failure rate and the other one is MTTF. So failure rate talks about we can, in term, if we take about the percentage, the chance of a system failing when it is operated talks about the failure rate, and it is nothing but the ratio of failures by hours tested. Whereas MTTF is inverse of failure rate, which talks about number of hours the system can operate without a failure, or the number of hours it can operate until a first failure can occur. Simple definitions, right? For beginner looks little complex but very easy to understand.